This might be the first time that calling these videos deep dives is actually accurate, because we spent a lot of time at the bottom of a lake. Lots of lakes. Literally diving deep. This is stupid. This is a bad way to start the video. Hello! So, I've been playing WoW for a very long time. Almost 20 years, in fact, but because I grew up playing the game when I was a little kid, there's a lot of content that I sort of completely glossed over or rushed through or didn't pay attention to, so I'm now taking the time to go back and replay all of WoW's old leveling content, starting with the Burning Crusade expansion, which came out in 2007. Today we're talking about Zangarmarsh. Zangarmarsh is a very, very cool zone. It is a giant mushroom forest, it is a fan favourite zone, it is the second zone in Outland, directly following Hellfire Peninsula before it. We are going to be diving deep into the story of Zangarmarsh, specifically looking at the story presented in the quests of the zone. I'll give a little bit of background where it's relevant, but for the most part we are sticking to the actual story of the zone itself that the players get to experience. And to do that, we are going to be playing through it on two different characters, because there is both Alliance and Horde quest lines happening in this zone. So, on the Alliance, we have Zerylin, the Draenei Restoration Shaman. Fun fact about Zerylin, he does not like mushrooms. I thought that was irrelevant fact, seeing as we are going into a very mushroom heavy location. Zerylin does not like them. Like eating them. He thinks they're slimy, and I feel the same way. On the Horde side, we will be playing Loriandril, the Blood Elf Arcane Mage. Fun fact about Loriandril, he does like mushrooms, and he judges Zerylin heavy for not liking them. I know that the two of them are on opposite sides of a faction war, I don't care. They've discussed mushrooms. They probably ran into each other around the Cenarian Refuge in this zone. Just go with it, it's fine. Anyway, let's jump into the story. Let me set the stage a bit for what we're about to find in Zangarmarsh. Zangarmarsh used to be the Zangar Sea. However, post-outlandification, the zone is instead a huge swamp with massive mushrooms, huge lakes, and completely alien wildlife. In contrast to Hellfire Peninsula before it, and spoiler alert, most of the zones surrounding it, Zangarmarsh is very sort of Burning Legion free. Like, this is the Burning Crusade expansion. This is the expansion when we are coming to Outland to deal with the Burning Legion. But the conflicts we face here in Zangarmarsh are instead rooted in the presence of the broken, and the increasingly concerning rate at which the Zangarmarsh, is drying up. But we'll get into that a little bit later. First, we are going to look into the Horde-specific quest lines. Like in the previous zone, the Horde and Alliance quests tend to mirror each other, just with different locations and characters, but it's the same gist of the quest. You're basically doing the same thing. We're starting with the Horde because I feel like it's less interesting and lore relevant overall, which is not a dunk on the Horde at all. We'll have plenty of opportunities in future zones to focus more on them. But in the meantime, for now, they're a little bit less relevant, so we're gonna start with them. Back in Hellfire Peninsula, everyone's favourite arcane mage Loriandril got a quest telling him that the Alliance have begun militarising old Draenei forts between Shattrath City and Hellfire Peninsula. So the Horde's trolls have begun setting up their own little outposts in Zangarmarsh in response to this. We are being sent to one such settlement, Swamp Rat Post. Swamp Rat Post is not the most expansive of settlements, but I find myself very endeared to it, mostly because it's called Swamp Rat Post. Here, we help out the trolls by getting Hydra scales to repair their armor, exterminating the nearby Marshfang Rippers, hunting eels, and collecting bug wings to make clothes. There's also a little bit of drama going on between two trolls, Magasha and Ryavage. Ryavage is like crushing hard on Magasha, but Magasha is not interested, and she's getting fed up at how Ryavage is ignoring all of his other duties in favor of trying to get her attention. We end up helping both of them out. Ryavage in an attempt to win Magasha's favor and get her attention, and Magasha in an attempt to pick up the slack caused by Ryavage abandoning his duties. Finally, we're sent to the Dead Maya to try and find a scout who left Swamp Rat Post 3 days ago and hasn't returned yet. The Dead Maya used to be a lake but recently it has almost completely dried up, which is causing all of the land around the area, which was sort of nourished by the lake, to shrivel up and die. We find the scout's body in the middle of the dead mire, surrounded by little bits of withered fungus, which sort of suggests that the scout was likely killed by the withered bog lords that are roaming the area. There are a lot of bog lords in Zangarmarsh. They're a kind of fungal giant native to the area, though I looked into it and they aren't actually made of fungus themselves, despite the name. Rather, they have fungus growing on them, which is like its own living thing, but the two of them sort of like live together in harmony and like live off of one another. And also, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole here. There was some concept art from Warlords of Draenor that showed a fungal whale based on the design of the Bog Lords, which could suggest that the fungal giants and the Bog Lords were somehow evolved from the fungal whales. But the fungal whale was never put into the game, so there's no way to know if this is actually true, but I'm adopting it as my personal headcanon because I think it's a cool idea. You know, because Zangarmarsh used to be the Zangar Sea, so, you know, it would have had whales in it and stuff. Yeah, whatever. We kill a bunch of bog lords until we find the scout's report, and we take that back to Swamp Rat Post. We need to take a report of our progress at Swamp Rat Post to the main troll base, Zabrajin. I love Zabrajin. It might be one of my favorite towns in the game, at least that I've seen so far going through these zones again. It's really, really cool. I have kind of a thing for swamp towns, because swamps are typically such inhospitable places, so like, why would you put a town there? You end up getting all of these bridges and buildings held up over water, and it gives it a way more interesting layout because of the impracticality. It's like, it's the same reason that I really like Morthal from Skyrim, even though Morthal is like objectively the worst of the major towns in that game. Anyway, Zabrajin also has all of these like sky bridges going between giant mushrooms where they've like built little structures on, and it's so cool. There's also a bunch of trolls standing around who just keep dancing all the time, so it's a fun vibe as well. Anyway, we basically just help out all of the trolls running errands around the village. We look into the poisons and medicines being used by the nearby feral fen lost ones. More on them later. We get rid of lots of annoying bugs, we gather lots of mushrooms, etc, etc. My favourite part of this chapter is Witch Doctor Torgash attempting to introduce murlocs as a species to Zangarmarsh. Because remember, we're on a different planet now. Most of the creatures that we have back home on Azeroth just straight up don't exist here. But Torgash wants to change that, and he's starting with murlocs. He gets us to take a crate of baby murlocs over to the nearby Daggerfen village, home to the Daggerfen lost ones. Again, more on them later. We release the baby murlocs and they run into the village and freak the ever-loving out of the lost ones that live there. The murlocs then put on top hats and start dancing, all whilst the lost ones are running out of their homes like screaming because they're so freaked out at these tiny little aliens that are just dancing all over their homes. It's just so great. I'm so concerned about the effect that this is going to have on the environment. Like, this doesn't seem like a very well thought through plan. Like, you're just introducing a random alien species to this environment with no thoughts on the consequences. Like, I'm pretty sure that's just something you're not supposed to do. But whatever, man. The murlocs are having fun. The leader here at Zabrajin, Shadow Hunter Dinjai, is worried about the ogres attacking. That's right, we got ogres! Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Draenor was not just the homeworld of the orcs, it was also the homeworld of the ogres. Though, thinking about it now, do we have ogres on Azeroth? I don't actually remember. Maybe we don't, maybe they're literally just on Outland and Draenor. Let me know if that's a thing, because I don't remember. Regardless, Dinjai sends us to Angarosh Outpost to see if we can find any attack plans and also to kill a bunch of ogres. These ogres were kicking Loriandrel's butt, by the way. The Soul Eaters, they would cast Shadow Bolt and just fully decimate like half of his health. Mans is far too squishy for this sort of thing. We were also sent to Daggerfen village, where we released the murlocs, to take out a bunch of the Daggerfen lost ones because they have been attacked attacking the scouts and messengers from the Trolls forces in, I've forgotten the name of the place, Zangarmarsh. And that's the end of the Horde specific stuff here in Zangarmarsh. Moving right along to the Alliance side. Our Alliance-specific quests begin out of Telrador. Telrador is a town on top of a mushroom. It's so cool. It's the more well-known of the major settlements here in Zangarmarsh, and I think that's fair because it's on top of a mushroom. It used to be a retreat of sorts for Draenei, Anchorites, and spiritualists, but these days is more a sort of refuge for the remaining Draenei and their new Alliance allies. We meet Anchorite Ahern, who tells us that the whole spiritual retreat vibe that they have here in the Mushroom Tower, part of that whole thing was these shrines that used to have anchorites tending to them. He sends us to explore the Bohamu ruins, where he's heard a tribe of lost ones have settled. Casting our minds back to Hellfire Peninsula, we encountered some of the Broken, which are Draenei that were super duper corrupted by demonic energy and enslaved by the Illidari and the Burning Legion. The Lost Ones are the same, but even more corrupted, and called the Lost Ones because their minds have seemingly become lost. They're described as being more primitive and aggressive than both the Draenei and Broken, as well as significantly smaller, their bodies themselves have sort of shrunk because they've been so corrupted. It's a very visually striking difference if you look at all of them lined up. There's a picture on the wiki, I'll put it on the screen. It shows just how deeply they've been mutated over the years, and it's very effective, I feel. Interestingly, there are both Broken and Lost Ones on Azeroth pre-Exodar Crash, because the Exodar Crash is how the Draenei got onto Azeroth. But the Broken and Lost Ones on Azeroth, you can find them in the Swamp of Sorrows, back in the vanilla days, and I feel like they were meant to be originally what's left of the Draenei before the Draenei were to become a playable race, and that's why there's sort of some weird discrepancies between the Draenei and the Broken and the Lost Ones, and the lore gets a little bit fuzzy around some of them. But the Lost Ones on Azeroth were called that because, their home had been lost. They were stuck on Azeroth after the Dark Portal closed. They were literally Lost Ones. And I'm not sure if this is a detail that has been completely retconned as of BC, because we find out that the Lost Ones on Outland are called that because they've lost their mind. But I just thought it was interesting that the name was reused and recontextualized here. Anyway, back to it. We head over to the ruins and find the whole place guarded by the Feral Fen Lost Ones. We encountered them just a little bit before with all of the Zangarmarsh quests. The Feral Fen are one of 3 Lost One tribes here in Zangarmarsh, and the Feral Fen are specifically quite focused on druidic magic and nature-based stuff, which I found very interesting because Draenei can't be druids. My personal theory is because the Draenei are very light-based, but then the Broken and the Lost Ones don't have that same connection with the light, the corruption has sort of severed that connection. So maybe in the absence of that, they formed this connection with nature and the wild magic instead, and now we have Lost One druids. I could be wrong, but it's a good theory, right? Ahern, the guy from Telrador, he thinks we should learn more to try and find a way of redeeming the Lost Ones. He thinks that them showing up there at those ruins, the ruins of an old Draenei temple, means that they must instinctually remember something of their heritage. There's some sort of connection still there inside them, back from when they were, uncorrupted Draenei. We head to Feral Fen Village to collect some of the idols that they're worshipping, and Ahern asks us to do this without angering the Lost Ones, and I don't know how he thought that was gonna work, but whatever, we do it. And we take the idols back to Ahern, and he identifies them as birds, which is weird, because there's no native birds in Zangarmarsh. It is a distinctly bird-free zone. So he theorizes that maybe these idols have something to do with the Arakoa. Arakoa are WoW's bird people, to put it very simply. We actually had a couple of side quests in Hellfire Peninsula that were to do with the Arakoa that I didn't quite have time to cover. They're very, very interesting in terms of their lore, but not really overall relevant to the story of this. They're far more involved in the next zone that we're going to look at, so I'm just going to sort of breeze past them now. Important thing to know is that the Lost Ones seem to be worshipping maybe Arakoa. That's weird. So Ahern makes us a potion that can disguise us as an Arakoa and tells us to go back to the Bohamu ruins to speak to Elder Karuti and to tell him as an Arakoa, that the Draenei are ready to welcome the Lost Ones with open arms. Karuti sees this Arakoa show up and start talking about the Draenei in a positive way and is like, no, you're not an Arakoa. And we're like, no, we're not. You got me. And Karuti is kind of insulted by this attempted deception, which, like, fair. And he tells us that he is very much aware of the Draenei's intention to try and redeem the Lost Ones, but they don't want redemption. They are capable and proud, and they just want to find their own destiny as Lost Ones, not as Draenei, not as broken, as Lost Ones. That's who they are now. We take this response back to Ahern, who is surprised and confused, but ultimately does accept that that's the Lost Ones' decision to make. The quests in this chapter are very similar to the quests that we do in the Zabrajin chapter. It's more sort of running errands for the people in Tel'Rador. But I want to expand on it a little bit more because we get some really interesting world building, seeing as we're talking not to people who have just shown up to Outland at the same time as us, but rather to Draenei who have been living here on Tel'Rador for quite a while now. So first up we have Ruam, who tells us that there isn't really much in Zangarmarsh that can burn, which makes sense. It seems like a very moist place. So the Draenei here instead use glowing Fulgor mushrooms as light sources instead, and we need to go out and gather a bunch of them. Next up, Norani tells us that during the war with the orcs, you know, we talked about that a lot in Hellfire Peninsula, the Draenei were very reluctant to leave the safety of the giant mushroom tower, which makes sense. And whilst these days they are heading out more, you know, post-war, the marsh is not necessarily any less dangerous thanks to all of the wandering beasties that roam the lands. We've got little flying ray creatures and giant fenstriders and huge wasps, and it's just like, it's a lot going on in this like otherwise very peaceful zone. So we help to thin the ranks of the Nether Rays and gather some food for the people here in Tel'Rador. Halrun tells us that he spied a new outpost being built by trolls. Whoa, we know all about that. We were just there, as Loriandrel. He's not wanting to start any beef with the trolls, like, directly now, because that just wouldn't end well. But he is worried that, like, a whole ass Horde outpost is gonna make it a lot harder to be able to get enough food for the people here. So we help him out by killing a bunch of Hydra. From the quests we do with him and Norani, we get the sense that the Draenei living here in Tel'Rador are really, really resourceful and quite inventive and have figured out really interesting ways to use these completely alien surroundings to help them survive. It's very impressive. Anchorite Ahern wants Tel'Rador to be a safe haven for anyone who needs it to be, whether that's Draenei or broken or lost ones. Or Alliance adventurers, that's us, we're also welcome here. He sends us to Oribor Harborage to extend our hand in friendship, as he puts it, to the broken that are settled there. At Oribor Harborage we find Ikuti, who leads the Kurenai tribe. The Kurenai's home city is in Nagrand, but they have been led here to Zangarmarsh by Ikuti to bridge the gap between them and the Draenei, which is great, but then there's also a lot of work to be done to ensure that the road between Nagrand and Tel'Rador that these broken are trying to travel is actually safe. Again, this zone may be super peaceful and chill to question, but it is not so good if you're just like a non-adventurer NPC who's trying to go for a stroll. Oh boy, you would be dead so quickly. Ikuti is also very aware of the Lost Ones and their refusal to bridge that same gap that the Kurenai tribe is trying to bridge with the Draenei. But unlike the Draenei, Ikuti understands that they don't need to push the Lost Ones any further than that. They don't need redeeming. But in saying that, he does also understand that there are perhaps some of the Lost Ones who are maybe taking things a little bit too far and need to be stopped. And this is where we meet our second Lost Ones tribe, the Daggerfen. Those are the guys that were killing all of the Zabrajin guys, and that's also the guys who got very freaked out by the Murlocs. Where the Feral Fen were largely composed of druids, the Daggerfen seem to be more leaning towards a rogue sort of vibe, which again is interesting because Draenei can't be rogues. Which, I'm gonna be so honest, I didn't notice until I was doing this video and I was looking into each of these little broken tribes. And I was like, wait, hold on a minute. Draenei can't be rogues, what's up with that? I think it's because of the hooves. Hard to be sneaky when you're clomping around everywhere. Anyway, I need to stop getting off topic. The Daggerfen are apparently dabbling in poisons and deceit, and Akuti wants us to put a stop to this deviance, as he puts it, before it can spread any further. Man, if I was a rogue doing these quests, I'd be like, aw, come on, it's not always deviance. But that doesn't matter, because Draenei can't be rogues. Timothy Daniels, a human in a scuba helmet, is real sick of these bugs. Zangarmarsh is full of bugs, and he's not happy about it. He wants to learn how the Daggerfen Lost Ones are making all of their poisons, because he thinks that's more interesting than bugs. Yeah. It's just a little side quest we go on. I just think the fact that a human called Timothy Daniels in a scuba helmet is just hanging out with all of these broken who are on this like huge spiritual journey that's super important to their heritage and their connection with their people, and it's just like he's just a guy. He's just a guy who's had it up to here with the bugs. Hey, remember the ogres from the Horde chapters? They're very close to Oribor Harborage. In fact, they're kind of like perfectly in between Zabrajin and Oribor, and we need to thin their numbers a little bit. Once they're taken care of, we're officially done with all of the Alliance-specific quests. However, we are going to stick with Zeralin for a little bit longer, because I'm going to be so honest, I didn't want to play through the neutral storylines twice, so I just did them on Zeralin. Let's do it! Our neutral chapters start off in the Cenarian Refuge. You may recall, in the Hellfire Peninsula questing, right at the very end, we had our last chapter based around helping the Cenarian expedition out of Cenarian Point. And now we're in Cenarian Refuge, which is their sort of main base of operations here in Outland. I think I could have explained that way better, but I'm not going to try it again. We're just going with that one. Listen, if you want super well-spoken lore videos, there are other channels for that. This is fun lore. This is chaotic lore. This is me messing things up a lot. Anyway, Cenarian Refuge is a cute little night elf town. I am so excited about this. You may have seen I am currently playing through Legion Remix. I'm doing other little videos on it. You could go watch them if you wanted to. I don't know, it might be fun. But I'm playing through Val'sharah at the moment. So this is like exactly the vibe that I am all about at the moment. Give me all of the night elf aesthetics, please. Yasiel Windsinger. Okay, pausing for a moment. I don't know how to pronounce this name. There are a lot of names in this that I don't know how to pronounce, and I'm just sort of like going with it. This one has stumped me more than most. I think it's Yasiel? Yasiel? What do we think? Should I do a community poll on how to pronounce this name? I don't know how to do that. Anyway, Yasiel Windsinger in Cenarian Refuge tells us that overall Zangarmarsh is exceeding expectations when it comes to how well the natural environment is flourishing. However, this amazingly lush environment that they've got going on here is currently at risk due to the water levels in the surrounding marshes and lakes going down. We've already seen a bit of this happening with the Dead Mire. Remember over there it was a huge lake that had completely dried up and is threatening the livelihood of my precious bog lords. So we go check out Umbrafen Lake, and there we find a whole lot of Naga, seemingly up to no good, as Naga are wont to do. I think the last time we talked about Naga was back in Azure Isle on my very first video. So let's have a quick refresher, shall we? Naga are snakefish people. Not snake people, not fish people, snakefish people. They used to be the Highborn, which were the fancy pants night elves back in the day, that were led by very important baddie, Queen Ajara. Normally when I say baddie in these videos, I'm meaning it in the like, you know, villainous bad guy sense. But in this instance, with Queen Ajara, I think both definitions apply. Anyway, long story short, they're not elves anymore. They're snakefish people, and rather evil. The Naga can be found all over Azeroth. They're a very common enemy to encounter. So why are they here on Outland? Well, one extra special Naga lady called Lady Vash joined up with Illidan back in the Warcraft 3 days, and has been hanging out here on Outland, leading the Naga here to bolster Illidan's forces. Listen, there's a lot more to that story. This is a huge simplification of everything that went down with Lady Vash. But once again, a lot of that story happens in Warcraft 3, and we are focusing on the Burning Crusade timeline. Back to the quests. Yisiel gets us to fly around the zone. She actually turns us into a crow to fly around the zone. It's quite cool. I enjoyed it. But we're flying around the zone looking for what could possibly be the source of this weird water issue going on. And we find a whole lot of pumps, which are connected to pipes, which are connected to this huge big structure in the middle of the biggest lake in the zone. From this, we gather that the Naga are pumping the water out of the other lakes and into that big structure, but we're not really sure why at this point. And as we're flying back to Cenarian Refuge, we head over the dead Maya and we sort of get a bit of an idea of what could happen to the rest of the zone if we don't put a stop to whatever the fuck is going on here right now. Yisiel gives us some seeds, which apparently carry with them the rage of the earth, which is sick, and we use them to shut down the various steam pump controls around the zone. We also take out a lot of the Naga forces as we're doing this, and whilst we are doing so, we find that they have taken a lot of Broken as slaves, specifically Broken from the Dreghood tribe. That's the tribe of Broken that we helped out in Hellfire Peninsula at the ruins of Shinar. We freed a bunch of them from the Illidari Taskmasters. And it made me so sad to see a bunch of them here in Zangarmarsh, especially because there was no way to free them. Unlike the ones in Hellfire Peninsula, they didn't run away if you killed the Taskmasters. They were just aggressive the whole time, so they would come and attack you and you had to kill them, and I was so sad about it. Oh, we also find some schematics on one of the Naga that we kill that confirms that the huge structure is a drain. Uh-oh, that's not good. Achaean, a Broken in Cenarian Refuge, tells us about the Umbrafen tribe, which is our third tribe of lost ones here in Zangarmarsh. And they are using dark magic to trap and enslave other Draenei. Oh no! We find them in Umbrafen village, unsurprisingly on the shore of Umbrafen Lake. Whilst there, we find a Tauran woman named Keira Longmane, and we escort her back to Cenarian Refuge in an escort quest. And we report back to Achaean, who asks that we search a nearby cave to find all of his valuables that were stolen. Oh no, they weren't stolen. He had to leave them behind when he escaped the Umbrafen, so we go to the cave to go and get them. Whilst we're there, we also clear out some of the nasty beasts roaming the area who were trying to kill the Sporlocks. Sporlocks are a kind of sporling, which in turn are little mushroom people, basically native to Zangarmarsh. The wiki describes them as diminutive mushroom men. It's so cute! I'm very fond of them. This is a very short chapter, but it introduces us to the Sporlings, and that makes it a great chapter in my book. Across the zone at the Cenarian Watch Post, we find Watcher Lisa O, who is all the way out here observing the interactions between Sporlings and Boglords! She sends us to the Spawning Glen to do some observing of our own, where we find that the Boglords are actually eating the pods of Sporlings. Ruh-roh. Lisa O wants us to find why the Boglords are doing this, because if all was well in their natural environment and ecosystem, they would not be having to resort to eating the Sporlings. They are meant to live in harmony with one another. We gather a bunch of mushrooms that Lisa O thinks look similar to the mushrooms found in the Hewn Bog, where a bunch of ogres have just moved in. This is old news to us. We've dealt with these ogres before. Lisa O doesn't want us to kill the ogres, though, because she thinks that they have just as much right as any other creature to be hanging out in Zangarmarsh. That's a bit awkward. Let's just not tell her what we got up to with the ogres before. That'll just be our little secret, okay? Nobody tell her. It's fine. So rather than killing any of them, because that would be super bad, who would go and kill a bunch of the ogres, she gets us to head to Angarosh Stronghold to just like steal back some of the mushrooms that the ogres were eating, so that Lisa O could try and grow like a new kind of mushroom that the Boglords can eat. And we get to follow her as she does this, and we see a Boglord come up and eat the mushroom, and it's a really nice little quest. I enjoyed it. Final story chapter! Out in the Spawning Glen, we find a Sporling called Farson. The Sporlings have real weird little names. Half of them sound like sneezes. Farson needs our help saving the spore sacks from the aforementioned very hungry Boglords. Once we've done enough quests and we're deemed trustworthy, we are sent to Sporagar, which is the capital of the Sporagar tribe that all of the Sporlings are a part of. We meet the leader, Mischiffin. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that name again. And we learn a lot about their culture, like how they use mushrooms for currency, but then also because they're really short, there's actually only so many mushrooms that they can reach to gather, so we have to help them out gathering mushrooms that they're too short to be able to grab. This chapter culminates with us escorting a bog lord called Fwar to a nearby Naga camp to yoink a very powerful relic and take it back to Sporagar. My love for bog lords is the only thing stopping me from despising this quest, because it was an escort quest, and a very long one at that. Also, this whole chapter was weird because it was all reputation locked. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but like, you had to keep reaching the next level of reputation with the Sporagar faction before you could progress with the quests. I think this would have made a lot more sense back in Burning Crusade when there weren't like established story chapters that everything was sort of split into. Like, it would have felt a lot more natural then, but with this, it just felt kind of weird. But I didn't hate it. It was just weird. Anyway, that's all of the quests done. Woohoo! I thought this zone was fantastic. I know I say this about every zone that I've played, and like everything that I experience in the game, but like, I'm being completely honest. I just think this game is fantastic, you know? Maybe it would give more context if I like ranked the zones each time. Okay, so I think my current ranking of the zones that we've explored in these videos would look like this. So Eversong, Bloodmist, Zangarmarsh, that's this one, Azumist, Ghostlands, Hellfire Peninsula. That's not to say that the ones at the bottom are bad. I still think every zone I've played is f***ing phenomenal. But that's my ranking, I think, best to worst. Worst. So Zangarmarsh is pretty high, and I think that's largely because of the themes playing out in this zone, specifically on the Alliance side specific quests. The quest lines involving the Broken and the Lost Ones explore independence, spirituality, heritage, and ultimately acceptance, even if not quite understanding just yet. You can talk to one of the Broken at Oribor Harborage, and he says, "When I speak to Draenei, I often get the sense that they consider themselves removed from their environment. Many seem to pity my brethren, the Broken, who they say have lost something. We Broken may have lost our inclination toward the light, but our experiences have brought us closer to the land. My people see opportunities where few Draenei do." I think it was brilliant to have this zone so far removed from the Burning Legion conflict, at least on the face of it. Like, whilst the Naga are working for Lady Vash, who in turn is working for Illidan, there's no burning green fire or giant demons walking around. It's a peaceful, quiet, and completely alien place that invites contemplation and reflection. You get to spend time with the people here and learn how they've adapted to this foreign landscape, whilst also seeing how the problems that plague us back on Azeroth are not so different here on Outland. Rather than trying to put a dent in the Legion's forces, the people here are simply trying to survive and connect and preserve the natural environment around them. I love when WoW goes into the preservation of these environments that we find in the zones, because it feels so much more poignant, especially now considering all of the like climate change going on in the world and everything. Overall, I think this zone feels very human. Not like human, but very like human, you know? Yeah. Things that I love. Okay, we're gonna go through the obvious things first. I love the giant mushrooms. Who doesn't? And it's such a cool concept for a zone. It's a forest but made of mushrooms. That's amazing. And the fact that like some of the mushrooms have literal buildings on top of them. That's so cool. I love that it is a complete tone shift from Hellfire Peninsula in literally every way. Like, the most obvious is the visual tone shift. You go from red to blue. That's about as basic as you can get. The music is completely different. We'll come back to talking about the music, but it goes from this like intense sort of on edge vibe to this very like chill, peaceful, very Draenei inspired sort of vibe. How many times can I say the word vibe? And then the quests themselves are so different. Like, the whole focus of the story is just so completely removed. And I think it's such a great idea, because Hellfire Peninsula is this huge bombastic beginning to the Burning Crusade where you are up against the Burning Legion and there's Alliance versus Horde conflicts going on, and it's like action, 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 and this huge fiery landscape. And then you go to Zangarmarsh and it's it's people trying to connect with themselves and their heritage, and it's gathering mushrooms and helping out weird little mushroom guys and trying to make sure that this beautiful marsh doesn't get completely drained of its water and lose everything that makes it such a beautiful environment. It's so good, and I think it's such a good choice for the second zone of the expansion. I love it. Okay, yes, the music. The music is amazing. I think the more that I listened to it, the more that I felt, because at first it feels very peaceful, like it's very much like the Draenei music of As You Missed a Blood Mist, but then there's something about it that I think makes you feel slightly uneasy. Like there's just a little bit of tension in there. Not enough to notice at first, I think, but the more time you spend there, it's like something just felt a little bit off, and I think that was really, really cool and really, really effective. I love just the general abundance of Draenei vibes. I love the Draenei. I don't know if I've made this clear yet, but the Draenei I think are my favorite race in the game. I'm very attached to them. As we know, my main is a Draenei, and I just love them. And I love how much Draenei lore we got here and how much interaction we got to see between the Draenei and the Broken and the Lost Ones. I think that is such an interesting dynamic, and I loved getting to see that fully explored here. And just like the music and the architecture and having so many Draenei around, it just warmed my heart. I love my sexy blue goat people. I love them so much. I love to the Firefly Tavern. This is the inn in the Cenarian Refuge, and it's called the Firefly Tavern because there's literally a bunch of fireflies floating around inside. It's really cool. The steam pump controls when we're doing the quest to help like shut down the steam pumps, and we use the seeds that carry the rage of the earth, and it's really cool. The steam pump controls emanate this very like mechanical, steamy, pressury sound that is so at odds with the rest of the sounds that you hear in the zone, and it really makes them stand out and helps reinforce that all of this stuff that the Naga is doing is so unnatural in the context of Zangarmarsh, and it's so fitting, and I love it. It's a very nice touch. Fenstriders. I love the Fenstriders. They are the big, tall guys walking around in all of the rivers and everything. They're like the Silt Striders in Morrowind, and I want one so bad. I want it as a pet. I want to ride around on one. I think they're really cool. They are all hostile, which makes me sad. But I think even that is really cool because it's like they're walking around in all of the rivers and waterways through the zone. And the zone is basically made up by a bunch of little islands because it's a marsh, and that's sort of like how that's structured, you know? Geology? I don't know which one it is. But it means that anytime you are like on land doing quests or anything, you're being sort of circled by these huge, big, tall beasties, and if you get too close to the edge, if you get too close to the water, they gon' attack you. It's really cool. It adds a cool sense of danger and tension to whatever you're doing in Zangarmarsh at the time. I really like it. I think I love the spawning glen. I'm still unsure on this. I'm putting it in here because I want to talk about it. It's a very distinctually, visually different place. Visually distinct was the correct way to put that. That's fine. Because like the whole zone is blue, and then you go into the spawning glen and it's all orange and red, and I like it when there's contrast like that. But also it's like there's just a lot of like weirdly pulsing things that just kind of ick me out a little bit. I love how much Zangarmarsh truly feels like a different planet. We sort of got that sense in Hellfire Peninsula when you walk through the portal and you see the sky and you're like, whoa, we're not on Azeroth anymore. But then the actual landscape of Hellfire Peninsula, like that could be Durotar, you know? Like it's not too crazy. You go into Zangarmarsh and there is nothing like that anywhere on Azeroth. The giant mushrooms, the completely weird alien creatures, it's all so different and so alien, and oh my goodness, it's so cool. I think they completely hit the nail on the head with the vibe in Zangarmarsh. It's so good. This is a small thing. In Telrador, there's an inn, and the inn has a balcony, and on the balcony there are these little like deck chair lounger things. This is such a small detail, but I just really liked them. I thought they were cute, and I liked the idea of people being out on the balcony in Telrador and like lounging on these little lounge chairs surrounded by mushrooms. I don't know, it's the little things, you know? Oh, I love the world building. So this sort of goes hand in hand with both like all of the Draenei lore stuff and then Zangarmarsh feeling like a different planet. There is a side quest given by one of the Broken in Oribor Harborage. I have it all written down. He sends you to get some hides from some beasties. This is very typical side quest stuff, but I loved it because it mentions how the Draenei in Zangarmarsh always stand out because their armor is really shiny, whereas the Broken know how to make armor that better blends in with the marsh and like makes more use of the natural resources there. And the quest giver, he's kind of poking fun at the Draenei for this, you know, with how shiny and easily spottable they are. But he says that he remembers how kind the Draenei have been to the Broken in Zangarmarsh, and so he wants to teach them to make armor out of those native hides and share the knowledge that comes with that. And it's just such a great bit of world building to establish both the practices of the individual groups, but then also the relationship between them. And then also the overall environment of Zangarmarsh. It's so good. It's so effective. I like the mushroom circles. There are mushroom circles all over the zone. Okay, I don't know how true that is. I found at least 2, and therefore they are everywhere. But I love a mushroom circle in any context. There is a portal, like a mini dark portal. I was so confused by this because I found it just randomly out in the zone. The area does have a name and I didn't write down what it was, and I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it's like its own little area. You're never sent there for any quests. It's just like a little bit of flavor out in the world, and the Hellfire Peninsula music starts playing in that area. And I was like, what? What is this? Why is this not explained anywhere? And I believe it was a reference to all of the portals that Ner'zhul opened up. Maybe this is one of them, and it's like completely non-functioning now, but it's like stuff that was mentioned in Warcraft 3, and then with Zangarmarsh they showed that, oh, one of these portals was here in Zangarmarsh. Here it is. And it's not like directly referenced, but it is there. And I thought that was very cool. And I could be getting the lore around that wrong because I didn't look too deeply into it, but I just thought it was a cool little detail, and I really liked that the Hellfire Peninsula music played there. And finally, as a surprise to absolutely no one, I loved the Bog Lords. I love them so much. They're just so big, and I think they're really cute, and I like the lore around them. I like that they're covered in mushrooms that are alive. I'm sad that they're going extinct, and I'm sad that the ones that aren't going extinct are like having to eat the sporelings. There's a lot going on for the Bog Lords at the moment, but I just like them. I think they're neat. And that's everything. That's Zangarmarsh. Oh my goodness. Okay, once again, I am going to be doing the instances in a separate video. We have 3 dungeons and a full-sized raid this time to talk about, but they are going to be in a separate video. I read through a lot of your comments talking about whether or not to keep them as a separate video, and I've decided I'm going to do it on a zone-by-zone basis, deciding whether or not that's the right thing to do, because there are some zones that like only have 1 instance, and it's a really short instance, so I'd be able to shove that in the main video, but then other zones like this, when we've already got a huge amount of information happening in the zone itself, and then 3 dungeons and a full-size raid, oh boy, that's not going in the same video. That's its own video. So keep an eye out for that. Coming soon. Also coming up, I will have some more chill videos of me playing Legion Remix. Great video to shove on in the background if you're also playing Legion Remix. I'm having such a great time with it. I am just so thrilled by everything that I have encountered so far, and I'm really, really enjoying playing it. I will also have another episode of the Sims drama series coming out soon. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that as well. And I might have another, you know, completely unrelated video that I'm working on as well, which is very, very silly and a very stupid concept for a video, but I'm excited about it, so keep an eye out for that as well. And then obviously the next zone we're going to be looking at is Terakar Forest. I've only played through Terakar once. I don't really remember it, but it has our major city for the Burning Crusade expansion, Shatrath, so that's exciting. I'm sure there'll be lots of really cool lore to talk about there. I'm super excited to delve into it. I finished that sentence like I had more to say, but I think that is just the end of a sentence. If you're enjoying these videos and want to support the channel and support me to help me make more videos in the future, you can now become a channel member. I still haven't got that whole thing down yet. I'm working on it. But you can now become a channel member if you want to support the channel. I am working on a few exciting things to go along with that, including a Discord, which will then also tie in with opportunities to join me playing through some of these zones, doing the instances and stuff, and also some extra like behind the scenes stuff, probably of me just being really stupid. We'll find out. Thank you so much to the people who have already become channel members. It is just the coolest, most heartwarming thing in the entire world. And just thank you generally if you've gotten this far in the video. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the comments, as always. Yeah, I think that's it. I need to record the instances one now, but I'm gonna go have lunch first because I have been recording for like almost an hour and a half and my back hurts. Okay, bye!